Thank you for joining us for this message from More Life Church, where we exist to love God, to love people, and to reach a region for Jesus and to make a difference for generations to come. Now, to learn more about how we're reaching our community and how you can partner with us and learn how God has uniquely designed you, check out Grow Steps on Demand by visiting morelifechurch.com/growsteps or by downloading our app today. But for now, enjoy today's message.
Today is part 5 of this message series called Wrapped. I don't have a lot of notes and slides. I really have just a passage of scripture and a few thoughts, but the title of my message today is Limits, Leftovers, and Legacy. Limits, leftovers, and legacy. Today is our Legacy Sunday. It is the day that many of us have been preparing for in our hearts, praying about, getting ready to bring our best gift to our King at the end of this year, which we are going to use as a church family to give outside of the walls of this church. We've done this for several years now. Let me just say one thing about giving, because this message isn't really about giving, but I just want to say one quick thing about giving. It can be a touchy subject, but something that has become a part of our rhythm, our nature, and part of our language is this. I want you to understand something. The way I view it, you never give to a church. You give through a church. And that's an important distinction, because this is an opportunity for us to band together and give together and make a massive difference together through helping over 50 families so far with having a really special Christmas that wouldn't be able to have one, with the internal kitchen initiative that we have going on, and so many other things that we've talked about, missions locally and nationally and globally. Every year we help plant a church, at least do our part to plant a church somewhere in the globe. We give outside of our community, but we do give inside of our community. And so I want to talk about this limits, leftovers, and legacy within the context of your family, although it reaches far beyond your family. These things reach far beyond family. Let me just start with a couple definitions for you. A limit is the furthest extent of one's physical or mental endurance. How many of all experienced the limitation of mental endurance? How many of you experienced that this morning while you're getting ready for church? You just hit the limit, you hit the wall. We all have limitations, and I'm going to talk about that. You're limited in 3 areas: your time, what Jesus called your time, your talent, and your treasure. You're limited in the amount of time you have. You are given so much time on this earth. Everyone, no matter how gifted, how talented, no matter how much ability you have a limit in your talents and in your ability and in your resources, your money, your possessions, your stuff. Everyone has a limit in those 3 areas. And we'll talk about that more later. Limits. Now, every family has limits. Every family has physical and mental endurance limitations. Every family understands this next term, leftovers. How many of y'all love leftovers? Anybody love leftovers? I did a little bit of research on leftovers. My mind works a little bit weird. I get real forensic on things that probably nobody is interested in, but I think it brings meaning to our lives. I found these top reasons why people eat leftovers. We eat leftovers to save time and effort. We eat leftovers, 18% of us, to save money. 26% of us say we enjoy them. And 41% eat leftovers to avoid wasting food. How many grew up in a family of a clean platers club? It was an initiative. We don't leave anything on our plates, right? We eat it all. We eat it all, even if you don't like it. I remember one time my stepmother made split pea soup. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Y'all went to the same school I did, I could see, on split pea soup. And as a young man, I did not like it. Now, have you noticed, if you've aged any, your taste buds change over time, it seems like. And things you used to hate, you now like. Now, I have not aged to the point where I yet like prunes or prune juice. Just need you to know I'm not that old just yet. I think that is the marker for old and young. When you say I need prune juice, I'm sorry, that was not in my notes. I'm going to get in trouble. But don't waste it. Don't throw it away. My stepdad, he grew up poor. And once I knew him, I was young, but he was in his 30s, 40s, 50s. And all the time that I've known my stepdad, he has never once eaten potato soup as an adult because they were so poor. That's all they ate pretty much every meal was potato soup. The other thing he never did was he never ate leftovers. He had so many leftovers in his life that he grew to the place where he despised leftovers. Listen to some facts that I found. Americans waste about 240 pounds of food per person per year, which means 20% of the food that ends up on our plates, 1/5, ends up getting thrown away. This, just from the American waste, and I'm not guilting Americans, I'm pro-America and love this country, but it's an interesting stat. This is enough food to feed 2 billion people every year from our waste and leftovers. We waste not only food, but we waste things like water, fossil fuels, so on and so forth. There's about 40% of all the food that's prepared, some form of that food in America ends up in a dump by the end of the year. Limits, leftovers, and legacy. And I want to tie these three things together. Legacy is this. It's an interconnection across time, meaning different generations, with a need for those who have come before us and a responsibility to those who come after us. So a legacy is a bridge between those who are before us, those who are after us, receiving and passing on. Paul said it to Timothy this way. He says to Timothy, take the things that I've taught you, teach those things to faithful people who will then in turn teach others also. There is a pattern in Scripture that you will see of this receiving and passing on. To illustrate limits, leftovers, and legacy, I want to look at a very familiar passage of Scripture. And it's found in John chapter 6. And this is the feeding of the 5,000. Which many of us have read many times. I've preached on many times, but never anything just quite like this. So, John chapter 6, beginning in verse 1. I'm going to read all the way through verse 14 and take some pauses in the journey. Sometime after this, Jesus had just been resting and getting a break from life. Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is, the Sea of Tiberias, and a great crowd of people followed him. And then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover feast was near. And when Jesus looked up and saw the great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, where shall we buy bread for these people to eat? He asked this only to test him. Watch this. For he, Jesus, already had in mind what he was going to do. Can I just say this? When you don't know what to do, Jesus already has an idea of how it's going to work out for you. And I want to look at Mark chapter 6. This is one of the very few narratives and stories that's covered in all four Gospels. And I wanted to see, okay, why did Jesus, we know the end of the story. If you don't, spoiler alert, he feeds everyone with a small boy's lunch. But I wanted to know before I got to that, why? Why did he even care? That might seem like an assumed answer, but the motive of the heart of Jesus tells us a lot. And in Mark chapter 6, that gospel writer tells us why Jesus moved to feed these 5,000. And here's what the scripture says in Mark 6:34. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, so that section we just read from John, now just reading the passage from Mark, said this, he, Jesus, had compassion on them. Would everyone say compassion? He was moved with this deep sense of care because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. So Jesus looks out and he sees people hurting. And above everything that I share with you today, I'm asking God to somehow give each of us a new and fresh measure of his mercy and his compassion for humanity. Especially at this season. In your families, this will make a difference. Oftentimes, I've observed that families end up getting sideways with one another, arguing about things that really don't matter because we're not driven by a heart for broken humanity, but we're driven by how we can get more of what we already have for ourselves. And Jesus doesn't approach life this way. He has compassion on them. They were sheep having no leader, having no guide, having no helper. And so we get back to the narrative in John, and here's what Philip answered. He asked Philip a question, what do we have? And Philip says, it would take more than a half a year's wages, half a year's salary, to buy enough bread for each one, watch this, to just get a bite. Half a year's salary. How many of you are interested in giving up half a year's salary for a group of people to get one bite? Sounds like a bad exchange to me, doesn't it to you? Like they don't even get full. They just get a bite. Another of his disciples, Andrew, spoke up, Peter's brother, and here's what he said. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? The first part of today's message is limits. And here, one of the disciples starts off with saying, hey, here's something, but then he reverts back to the limitation that is on it. But how far will that go? A little bit of bread and a little bit of fish. Here's what I want you to see. Everyone in this room, every family in this room, every family watching online, every family of the family that's in this room and watching online, everyone you know and all the people they know, they don't have enough to have enough. We're all limited. One of the things that vexes me about Christmas time is that we live with the reality of budgets. And no matter how much you want to do, there's always something you can't do. I grew up at part of my life with a single mom who really was a ninja at navigating limits. She was limited just like you are, except I never knew it. Isn't it interesting? When you grow up poor, you don't realize you're poor until you run into someone who isn't poor and realize they have more than you. And all of a sudden, the envy and the desire for more grows inside of you, which isn't always all bad. It just matters what's the motive to gain that more. But this is what I want to bring out to you in terms of limits that maybe you haven't thought of before. Hidden in history is a mom who's technically the hero of the story. Because I have a suspicion that this little boy didn't pack his own lunch. I have a suspicion there was some Jewish mom working in the kitchen, gathering up some stuff that probably they had for dinner the night before, put it in a nice little saran wrap bag, and sent it to him on his day's journey. I only think that because my mom packed my lunch most of my life. I was spoiled as a child. I need you to know this. I never made my own bed until the day I got married. Isn't that sad? My mom made my bed for me. When I got married, I expected my wife to continue to do the things that my mom, she left so I can say it, you know what I'm saying? She left so I can get away with it. But my mom, I came from an Italian family, and my lunches at school, my school lunches were often embarrassing. I wonder how many of y'all's mom, I got packed real food for lunch, not like a bologna sandwich all the time, but when we would go and visit my grandma's house, she would make homemade pasta and breaded cutlets and homemade bread. Like, that's what my mom would pack in my lunch for. I'd have to ask the teacher to borrow a microwave. That's what my lunch was like. She sent me with real silverware to school, and I had to bring it back. Like, she made sure I brought it back. That's crazy. It was embarrassing, but it was good. Like, I'd give anything for one of those meatballs right now. I'm just telling you, it was good. But even in those, some people will take all the miraculous, if you'll let them, out of the Bible, and they'll say things like, well, they just had really big meals back then. This is a little boy's lunch, and Jesus uses it to feed 5,000. It's a limit. Somewhere in the chronicles of history, there is a mom who's actually, I think, the hero of this story. And so I want to say this to every mom, every dad, every grandma, every grandpa, every aunt, uncle, every child giver, every foster parent. I know you're tired, and I know you feel unnoticed, but there is something powerful that's working in your kids' life. Young kids, adult kids, all of those things you packed into their life when they were little, it's going to grow a great big seed, and God's going to do something with the little that you had because you put it in the hands of the one who could multiply it. This is not up to you. This is up to him. You have done your part. You are not God. You are not Jesus. You are not the Holy Spirit. Just let God work with that little limited lunch and watch what he does. You never know what Jesus is up to with the little somethings you have to give. You never know. Let's keep reading the story. Jesus said this, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. And he did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, everybody say enough. They had enough. He said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted. Every family in this room experiences limits. But I want you to look at your leftovers in a different way. Use the analogy of the leftovers of the meal. Going to grandma's house and her making an incredible Sunday dinner and you bringing it home and having it for lunch the next day. The leftovers are amazing. I want you to understand that there are people in this room that your leftovers are someone else's dream. Your leftovers are beyond someone else's wild imaginations. I don't say that to guilt you, because guilt is a terrible motivator, and I would never put that on you. I say that to bring a greater level of awareness to what you actually have. Because here's what I know has gone on in this room and online and people within our church family as they were thinking about this, their Legacy Sunday, their gift. You've reverted back to the disciple who said, what is this little thing amongst such a great need? What is my $100 against a $100,000 goal? What is this little thing that I have? And what you're unknowingly doing is despising the thing that you have. Jesus doesn't want anything to be wasted. Look at the next verse, and it says this: so they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. Would you write this down, please, if you're taking notes? There's a miracle in what you don't want. There's a miracle in what you have too much of. There's a miracle in what you can't or don't want to use anymore. There's a story where Jesus is interacting with a woman. He had just gotten finished healing some people that day, and a woman came who wasn't Jewish. And Jesus has a conversation with her that in today's culture would have resulted in him being canceled. The woman says, I would like, in my own words, I'd like to be healed. And Jesus said, I've not come for your people group. He says this, he says, you don't take the children's bread and give it to the dogs. This could be quite offensive. I don't think anyone in this room would want to be inferred to be less than a human being and lumped in with the species of canines. I don't think anyone would want that. The woman, though, rather than being offended, she says something that's really, to me, earth-shattering. She says this: you're right, Lord, but even the dogs get the crumbs from the master's table. What is she saying? She's saying that what is too much for others would be a huge blessing to me. I'll take the leftovers. I'll take the stuff that has gotten left and discarded by who's who and the people in the right categories and whatever that means. Left over, watch this, by those who had eaten. Now this is where I get really direct as a pastor, or as direct and kind at the same time as I can be. I get worried in church environments when Christians become overeducated spiritually and underexercised. I get concerned when we hear messages and feed and feed and feed, and then yet have the audacity to write letters of criticism about the message that we heard. No one's done that in quite a long time around here. But when that was happening, that happened a lot to me several years ago, and it kind of hurt my feelings and made me feel a certain way until I realized something. I am not hearing this from the people that I'm really, really trying to reach. Because people who are really hungry, they don't complain about the food that's on the table in front of them. People that are really hungry, they don't get picky about what's put out in front of them. They say, thank you, let's go. And can I just say this? This is the part where I want to be direct. There are people all over this community that would love to be in an environment like this that you often and I often take for granted, and realize that there are people within arm's throw distance of this church, if given a chance, would want to sit at the table that we have set for a whole bunch of others to eat at. There is a miracle in the leftovers. And I don't mean this to be an offensive term, but I hope that at the end of 2021 and all through 2022, our church gets a spirit and a compassion that will rest on us and live inside of us that makes the determination we're going to go after the people who would love the leftovers. We've eaten a bunch. We've been satisfied. We've gotten some good things. And I'm looking for a church who says, hey, listen, we've eaten, but we need to get to the folks who just haven't eaten yet. Watch that. Left over by those who had eaten. In other words, how can we recycle our blessings? How can we receive and pass on to those who are in need? And as I finish, I want you to think about this. There is more to this life than this life. This is where legacy starts to kick in, where we receive and we pass on. There is more to this life than this life. And giving to something that will outlive me is the goal that I've set in front of our church. There's all kinds of incredible churches in our community in this world, and I'm assigned to lead and serve this one. And one of the things that I want buried deep in our hearts is the desire, the draw, the compassion to give to something that will outlive us. If Daniel, if you can hear me, my man, you can come and help me. Giving to something that will outlive me. Everyone in this room, you have a limit. Everyone in this room has experienced literal leftovers. And rather than despising those leftovers, I'm hoping that you'll see that those limits, when given to Jesus, end up creating more than enough for you and create a source of supply for others. That's what he does. And those leftovers, the things that are beyond what you need, are the fabric, are the tools, are the makeup, are the ingredients for our legacy. Gather them up. Everybody to eaten. Everyone in this room and your family, you have something. You have something. And together as a church, I hope that the compassion, or a measure of the compassion that was present in Jesus on that day, fills this room and fills hearts and lives all over this place and online. Please don't, this might sound strong, but it needs to be. Please don't dishonor the Lord by acting as though what you have is not enough. That little boy's lunch up against the vast need was nothing. And I don't care if you are a millionaire 100 times over in this room, there's still a limit to what you have. It doesn't matter if you have the smallest amount. I want to tell this story because it was a pivotal moment in my family. The twins were very young. And this is when I learned about how God uses limits. Ange and I learned this together. I just want to say this too real quick before I forget. Limits are a reality. Younger parents, I want to give you something to think about. Grandparents of younger kids, stop telling young people they can do whatever they want in life. That might sound mean at first, but it's one of the most kind, empowering things you could ever tell a young person. Don't tell someone they can do whatever they want. It's that niceness that's misplaced, which is the reason why you laugh at people on American Idol when they can't carry a tune in a bucket. Because someone told them they could do whatever they wanted in life. No, they can't. They cannot. And neither can you. There are things, though, that you're brilliant at. And that's what we want to steer our young people toward. is the thing that they're brilliant at. And one of the concerns I have is that, and this is going to get me into trouble, but one of the concerns I have is that we've bought into this philosophy, an idea that everyone has to go to college in order to succeed in life. No, you don't. No, you don't. Some of you shouldn't, and you know it. And everyone around you knows it, except for grandma who's writing the check. And someone needs to love grandma enough to tell her, give you that money, you can spend a month in Europe and go to hostels and get on YouTube and learn way more than you ever would and have more life skills than you ever would had you spent $150,000 at university. That system is broken. And someone needs to stand up and speak up and say it's broken, because we're telling people they don't have limits. You have limitations. God put them there. They're not a curse. They're a blessing. We never once told our kids, you can do whatever you want in life. You want to know why we never told them that? Because we watched. Now, we did encourage them and strengthen them and tell them there was something in life that they would be brilliant at. But your child, no matter how much you love them, they will not be brilliant in anything and everything. They won't. This will not hurt his feelings. My youngest son, Alex, I looked at this 2 years ago. 2 years ago on Legacy Sunday, they were getting ready to play in the state championship. And Alex was the kicker for the football team. And he had a kicking coach. And I talked to his kicking coach and I said, what can he do? What are his limits? He said he's not ready for D1. He's too small. He needs a little bit more muscle. He can definitely play D2 wherever there's room on the roster. Perfect. Thanks for letting us know his limitations. But Alex was the master of his limitation. And this is what Alex said when he graduated high school. He said, what do you think, buddy? Well, as we were leading up to that point, what do you think, buddy? You're going to kick at the next level? Sure would make your dad's heart real proud. You work your way up, and one day you come out of the horseshoe tunnel with Pennington on the back of the jersey. You will solidify your position as favorite child. I promise you, you will. And this is what he said. This is what he said. He said, Dad, I love football, and I love kicking, but I hate school. Don't go to school then, Al. Be done. Get into the workforce. Find something that you're passionate about and do that. Does that make my dad heart sad in any way, shape, form, or fashion? Absolutely not. Why? Because I need him to know sooner rather than later he has a limitation, and I don't want to frustrate him by pointing him in a direction that I know is going to hurt him and deter him, because he's not wired for that, and that's okay. What are you not wired for that you need to quit? What do you need to give yourself permission to stop in that limitation? Giving to something that will outlive me. God is drawn to us in our emptiness. He's not drawn to us in our fullness. Seems to me I went on a side journey and forgot where I went from. Does anybody remember? I never told the story about the twins. We learned the power of limits. We were in a church service. We had really nothing hardly. And we had given in that time, it was an outreach offering like we're doing now. In fact, it really was, that moment in our life is what inspired this moment for our church. There were family needs, things that people needed. And I'm like, yeah, how do I sign up for that list of helping with some of the family needs that I have? A young family with twins, and I think Ange was pregnant with Audrey. Chances are she was pregnant with someone. and we gave a gift, a financial gift, out of our emptiness to something that would outlive us. And I saw that as we gave that little bit against the need, but the great big amount to us, that God did so many things as a result of that in our hearts and in our lives, because we simply had the audacity to take the little bit and the limitation that we had and give it to Him.
Thanks again for joining us for this message from More Life Church. Now, if this message spoke to you, we would love for you to share it with someone you think could use it. And finally, if you would like to partner with us financially, you can do that by visiting morelifechurch.com/give. Now have an amazing day.